Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back in War Thunder looking at some more suggestions passed to the developers in April of 2019. Now, after looking at the aviation stuff, we're now onto the ground forces portion. There isn't as much here for the ground forces as the aviation, but there's a lot of very interesting vehicles with a lot of different ideas and designs, which are going to be fun to go over. But before we do, I do just want to let you know that on the War Thunder Twitter page and also the official forum, it says, "Attention all squadrons, we are ready to launch. Commanders and their deputies need to gather combat troops to participate in World War, which is scheduled to begin this month." So the greatly anticipated World War mode will be out later this month, something that I have personally looked forward to for a long time, and after talking to a lot of people who have participated in it and looked into it myself, I am very much looking forward to creating content around it. And the picture that they use here, I must say, is just absolutely stunning. Like, the artwork in War Thunder and many other games is just great. I'm so happy that we have this plethora of wonderful artists creating this great work. Anyway, let's get on to the ground vehicles, which are here in the suggestions. The first one being a American vehicle, which has been suggested by Kanata 18. This is the HSTVL. Now, if you don't know what that stands for, it's the High Survivability Test Vehicle. Basically lightweight. So the High Survivability Test Vehicle Lightweight, a hard name to say, and this is a very small, very low profile machine which is designed to be incredibly fast and to basically try and see if this type of fire control system and maneuverability is something that the Americans wanted to do in basically the 1970s and 1980s. This was a machine which tried to revolutionize the idea of combat, and around this time, you know, there was a lot of people who were trying different systems, who were working on different things, and of course the Americans being at the forefront of that, they had some weird and wacky designs too, including this one. So this machine has a crew of 3, it has a gunner, a driver, and a commander, but what is interesting about this machine is that the gunner and commander can both either, you know, drive or aim the vehicle. Every position has a way of using either the gun or being able to drive the machine. So even if you are down to 1 crew member, you can technically drive and aim this machine by itself, kind of similar to the Swedish vehicle that we've had a lot of look at. And the main reason the main reason why this was designed is all in this first sentence. So the high survivability of this vehicle is derived from the low silhouette, high horsepower per ton, duplication of sights, improved night vision capabilities, and the lack of specific driver and gunner controls. Any crewman can shoot, and both hull crewmen can drive. So basically, if you sit in the driver's position, and if we scroll down here, this is the general way that it looks. So you've got the driver here, the gunner here, and of course the commander here. If you are sat in the gunnery position, you are able to drive and shoot at the same time. If you're sat here, you can do exactly the same thing. The only difference is in the commander's seat, you aren't able to drive, but you can definitely move down to this position. And there's also, everyone has different sights, so you've got sensor displays, gunner's optical sights, of course, you've even got a rear view fixed TV camera, just to, you know, add onto everything. And the main thing that is interesting about this machine is the gun. The gun itself is a 75mm ARES XM274 heavy autocannon, which is a wonderful name for a gun. And the reason why it's called an autocannon is because, well, it's got an autoloader attached to it. Obviously, with a 3-man crew, there is no place where you can really fit there is nowhere where you can fit a loader, therefore you are stuck with a 20-round autoloader. The elevation arc of the gun is -17 to +45, so this thing can easily go down or up incredibly well, which is, you know, once again, a very nice little thing. I also believe that the autoloader is rated at 5.5 seconds, so that means that, you know, you can get a lot of shots off very quickly, and it fires APFSDS or APDSFS as it says here, and then also HE. So with that said, you can definitely see this vehicle being highly maneuverable, being able to run around like an absolute madman, maybe as a scout vehicle as well. I think I would personally be fine with that, and also, you know, be able to just be a general pain in the arse. And the Americans have a lot of machines like this, you know, the T-92, the little Scorpion, the M56, and also the Ontos. Why not add to that with this ridiculous machine, which can also go over 80 kilometers an hour? Pretty much what you take away from this is a incredibly lightly armored machine, but it does have crazy slopes on it. Like, I believe this is a 60-degree slope, so you're going to be pinging stuff off of it. And also, I can't find any values for the armor of the machine, but my guess is, of course, it's going to be incredibly lightweight, so, you know, not really useful. But the main thing is the speed, the stabilization of the gun, and also the reload, and the fact that it has access to great ammunition really puts this thing in a wonderful spot if it ever comes to the game. It will also be quite hard to kill unless it has hull break, which I'm guessing it will, because of the fact that it's going to be hard to shoot this machine since it is quite, you know, low to the ground, and the general shot on it, you know, you have to get through this here, which a lot of rounds are going to ping off. So for me, I'm very happy to see this machine. Hopefully in the future it is added into the game, just because it is a massively different vehicle, and it was built and it was tested, so why not, you know, throw it in. The next one is the Weasel, or the Weasel, or however you want to say it. The Weasel is a gun platform, I think is the best way of describing it, and this is from SW Pixie, and he's actually talked about it in a great way, some way that I haven't thought of these types of vehicles. You know, when you look at vehicles that the British have made, which are pretty much just gun platforms, and stuff like the German Weasel, he has described it as a modern-day tankette, and I think that's a great way of describing it. It's something that I personally have never thought of, so, you know, I just want to just say well done, because it's a really good word to try and encompass everything. So what is the Weasel? Unfortunately, in this post here, there is no picture of one, so I provided one myself. This is the Weasel, as you can see. Incredibly small vehicle, which is designed for light reconnaissance operations. It's also designed to be dropped from the air. It's basically reconnaissance and also infantry support and tank killing capabilities in a very small package. Now, they've also made the Weasel 2, which is a more modern one. It's a little bit more beefier, but at the end of the day, they form the same purpose. It's just a multi-role vehicle, which is designed to harbor different weapons on it to deal with different situations. And it seems to have been quite successful, at least from the preliminary tests that it's been used for. Designed to also not just be dropped from the air, but from a helicopter, which is not something that you see from armored vehicles normally. Now, the two that you see here, which is, you know, these are the two which are the main production versions. This one has on it a 20mm Rheinmetall cannon, and the other one has access to a tow launcher, which you can see right here. So these are the two main variants. They did also test other variants, such as one with a 30mm cannon, and one with even a Milan on it, and also one with, of course, a 50 caliber on it, and one with a 60mm mortar, and of course the hot missile as well. But the main ones that they went for is one armed with a tow or a tow 2, and then of course the 20mm one. These would be incredibly fun to use, basically because they are small. They don't really have any armor, you know, they're only basically supposed to stop rifle rounds, but the 70 kilometers per hour and their smallness will be just incredibly fun to fly around, especially if you have a tow launcher on it. I can once again see this being a great and fun scout to just run around for Germany. And Germany is, you know, missing its scouts. It definitely needs a lot of stuff like this, just like the British need the Scorpion, the Germans need their Marders, and they also need the Weasels. I think this would just be a wonderful addition to the game, because you could put them really at any tiers, and they would be effective scouts, even at top tiers, since they have the tow missile. Moving on to the next one, this is from Cade, I believe it is, and he's talking about the VickersMBT series. Now, we do have a Vickers in-game, but a lot of people have advocated for the later tier Vickers, you know, the Mark 7 and so on, but this post is about the Mark 1, the Mark II, the Mark III, and the subsequent variants which were produced by India. Now, if you don't know about the VickersMBT series, these machines were definitively designed to be export vehicles. So therefore, they were designed to be slightly different to the normal Centurions and also the Chieftains and Challengers that the British would use. They were more designed to be for, obviously, who they are exporting for. And in this case, there was an agreement with India in the late 1950s where they put some money forward, but they wanted kind of a cheaper version of a Centurion, so a lighter weight version which wouldn't have cost too much, but still had a powerful engine. And that's basically where the VickersMBT came from. It came from this idea of a lighter Centurion which would fill out the same combat role but obviously not cost as much. So the best way of looking at it is it's a Centurion which is more lightly armored, which actually has the Chieftain engine and transmission, or at least that's what it was designed to have. Obviously in subsequent iterations this changed slightly, but yeah, that's pretty much it. It obviously has the stabled L7, which is always lovely to see, and as I said, we do have one of these machines in game, but that doesn't mean it is the only version of the Vickers. You have the Mark 1, which is basically the standard one that we know from the game. Then you have the Vickers Mark 2, which is just the Mark 1, but has some swing fire missiles attached to it, and also a slightly new turret design, and the fact that it could sustain 56 kilometers per hour, which is crazy. But this was a single prototype. Here is a picture of said prototype showing that we do have, you know, evidence of it existing, and I'm sure there will be trials showing, you know, it's how, you know, it worked. But you can see where the swing fire missiles are mounted. They're mounted on what seems to be the back of either the engine deck or the turret right here, which is a little bit of an odd place to put it, but if it is attached to the turret, that would make a little bit more sense. But this could easily be a great premium, right? Kind of like along the lines of the STRV, which we have in game, or sorry, the RB52, I think it's called nowadays. So yeah, let's just stick it in. The next one is the VickersMBT Mark III. You can see that the turret has been significantly changed for this one. This is a 1975 tank, and it still had the same requirements as the Mark I, but it offered much better performance. The turret itself was much better designed for dealing with incoming ammunition. Then it had a new diesel engine, the Detroit Diesel 12V71T, and it had more modern fire control systems, the EFCS 600 from Marconi with the Pilkington PE Condor Commander's day-night sight, and also the NanoQuest L23 gunner's sight and the Simrad LV352 laser rangefinder. This was produced from late 70s, 1978, and it was sold to Kenya and Nigeria, where they are still used today, which is wonderful to see. So this, once again, could easily be added in the game, either as a British premium or just in the tech tree. The Vickers line, I personally believe, should be beefed out quite a lot, and there are a lot of tanks to do it. Then we have the VJ Anta. Now, the VJ Anta is a modified VickersMBT Mark I. Basically, what they did with it is it was built in the same way as the Vickers Mark I, and it came into service in it came into service after the 1965 war, and through constant exercises, it proved to be up to the expectations of the general staff in terms of speed and mobility, and the same gunnery standards were achieved due to the experience gained on the Centurion. The first battle test for it was in the War of 1971, which was the Bangladesh Liberation War, and 2,200 of these tanks were built from 1965 to 1986, which is insane when you think about it. And they were produced until 2008, which is kind of crazy. I think they were also, well, maybe not produced, but they were in service with the Italian army until 2008. So these machines lasted a hell of a long time in service, and there seems like the Indians really liked them. The next one is let's just say it is a crazy machine. Whenever you take the hull of a tank, take off its turret, and decide to mount any form of gun on it, you always get an interesting situation, and this one is no different. So this one is called the Catapult SPA, or of course the Catapult Self-Propelled Artillery. This is a marriage of the VickersMBT hull and the Russian M46 130mm field gun, which will get its notoriety in-game. I'm sure as soon as, it's added to something. It may already be, and I know we have some 130s, but I don't think it is the actual field artillery piece. I actually think they're the naval guns. But the main thing is you take a Vijayanta, which is, of course, a modified VickersMBT Mark 1, and you add 130 to it. Stick it on the back, very much in the style of the... Right, don't panic, I found it. It's the Archer, of course. I can't believe I forgot the name of the damn Archer. But yeah, the Valentine SPG, which was created. This Catapult SPA seems to have been around the same idea, apart from the fact that the Archer was, of course, designed for more tank-destroying duties, where this was much more designed around artillery ideas. The next vehicle to have a look at is the Imperial or the IGN, I should say, 12cm SPG. So the Imperial Japanese Navy 12cm SPG. Now, this is a, I suppose you'd call it a tank-destroying platform. Basically what they did is they took a Chiha chassis, or a Type 97 Chiha chassis, and slapped a long-barreled, massive 12cm naval gun, or 120mm naval gun, onto it, and tested it against vehicles. Now, what has always been the contention with this vehicle is the fact that whenever or at least I've personally had a look at this gun, I can't find it ever actually using an AP shell. The two shells it seems to have used is obviously a Type 10 HE shell and also a shrapnel shell. And the problem with this is obviously if you want to have it as a tank destroyer in-game and you want it at a decently high BR, an AP shell is going to have to be given to it, meaning that, you might have to change history a little bit, or, good old secret documents ideas. If we were being, absolutely serious about it, I would be completely fine with this being put at low BRs with just a HE shell, so it can just donk on a fool. But the main issue, of course, is I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't be happy with that. It's also, its reload is around about 10 to 15 seconds on the 120mm, which isn't too bad, and it's also got good gun depression, -10 and +20 for its elevation. And since it is on the Chiha chassis, it is believed to have the 170 horsepower engine that the Chiha had. Overall, it would be a really fun and interesting machine. I have personally looked forward to it for a long time. There's obviously not a lot of armor for the crew to stand behind, since there's not even really a gun shield on it. It seems like it was literally just a testing platform. But you can maybe imagine how, if this actually made it to combat, you would add some gun shielding and stuff just to try and, save the crew. There's also the interesting fact that this picture, which is one of the only ones that seems to exist of it, the suspension is having a rough time. I think is the best way of putting it. So moving around would be, kind of slow, and definitely the gun would be very, very bouncy. I still think it should be added to the game, though, just because it would be one of those wonderful Japanese machines, which would be incredibly fun. And the next one is a definitely needed one, and it's from Piev, and it's the Dario IFE. Now, what we've seen over the last year or so, the addition of the Warrior, the Bradley, the Type 87? or the Type 89, basically the Japanese IFV. Then we've seen, other additions in the IFV category for other nations. The Dardo IFV, I suppose you could even say the Merkava technically, but the Dardo IFV is the Italian version of their, infantry fighting vehicle. And I think it's been great over the last, few months that we have these IFVs in game right now. They offer different ways of playing the game, and since they've just been reduced in RP across the board compared to their MBT counterparts, now there's a reason to really start playing them. Now, remember, the Italians use the M113 APC like a lot of others did, and they decided that they wanted to design their own IFV. And so Otto Melara, who made the weapons and the fire control system, they seem to be mainly behind every every machine the Italians make nowadays, also went along with Iveco Fiat, who were responsible for the hull and the propulsion system. So those two married together, creating this really interesting machine. It has access to a 25mm Oerlikon KBA automatic cannon, which fires at 600 rounds a minute, so incredibly fast. And also, it has access to aluminium alloy with add-on steel armor. So pretty similar, probably in protection levels, to something like a Bradley, if I was going to be honest about it. And also, it has a V6 turbocharged after-cooled diesel engine, which gives it 512 horsepower, and also the ZF designed automatic transmission system. This means that it can go over 70 kilometers an hour around the battlefield, and I'm guessing the gun is stabilized. I can't find anything on if it's stabilized or not, but I'd be very surprised if it wasn't. They also made a machine based off the chassis, which has access to a 60mm cannon, a high velocity tower, a HVMS 60mm gun. This gun was designed to fire APFS-DS and also HE rounds, and it actually has a fire rate of 1 every 2 seconds, I believe, if I remember reading that right. Yeah, 30 rounds a minute. So this reloads every 2 seconds. This could be a devastating machine at top tier, and I believe there was only one prototype made, maybe a few more than that, but the main thing is it was built, it has been tested, and here's an actual picture of it. So for me, there are two versions of this Dardo that you could add, the 25mm version and the 60mm version. Now, if you actually look at the Dardo itself, and you can see a picture here, there is something odd coming off of it, isn't there? And how about this? What's this here? Well, one of the interesting things, right, about the Dardo is when you look at other IFVs that we have in game, they're mostly mouse controlled, right? The AT-GEMs, like if you look at the BMP-2 or the Bradley and stuff like that, well, the Dardo is slightly different. The Dardo has access to Spike anti-tank missile launchers. Now, these are optional. You can see that on this machine here, they're just taped to the side, and then on this machine there is no such Spike launchers. So why is it interesting that these are Spike anti-tank missile launchers instead of TOW or Hot missiles or even Milans? Well, a Spike anti-tank missile launcher fires a Spike ATGM. And guess what? A Spike ATGM is a fire-and-forget missile. It has to lock on before launch, and then after launch has an automatic self-guidance. So the missile is equipped with an imaging infrared seeker, and it's also a tandem charge heat warhead. So this, let's say how it would work in battle. You would look at a target, lock on, fire the missile, and then, reload and fire the next one. And it is, as I said, fire and forget. Now, technically, on the ground, we don't have anything which is similar to this yet. This would be a step ahead of the modern technology that we see in the game. And that is why, at least for now, I would advocate for the Dardo IFE with the 60mm, and then later on, get the 25mm with the Spike ATGM when everything else also gets its guided munitions in that sense. The last vehicle, also, this is the Spike ATGM mounted on a truck. I just thought this was a cool picture. The last vehicle is the Char the Char FCM-2C. This was one of the first and only super heavy tanks ever built. 69 tons or 68 tons, depending on who you ask. And what you will find is a massive French heavy tank, which was designed in the 20s, and you can definitely tell it was designed and built in the 20s. This was way ahead of its time. A lot of countries at the time in the 20s were still getting the grasp of what tank design was. The French were way ahead of the curve when it came to this. Even their World War I vehicles, they were some of the first people to create the turreted tank, if we want to see it like that. And the FCM took a lot of those ideas, expanded them from the First World War, and created this absolute monolith of a machine. Now, this, at least when it was first built, had 30mm of frontal armor, and it had 22mm on the side and rear, and also it had access to the main gun that you find. Now, the main gun on it, I believe, is a 76mm, just to make sure, sorry, 75mm Canon de 75 Model 1897. So yes, it has a 75mm on the front. It also has access to a bunch of machine guns, and they made a few different styles of this FCM. They made one, which, as you can see, the Char 2C Champagne, or Champagne, sorry, and then it was modified with a 155mm howitzer gun right here. And this picture, whenever I've seen it, always creeps me out, and you know why? Look at this. It's not nice looking, is it? Anyway, actually no, we could probably zoom in. Oh, you're not going to zoom in for me? Alright, fine. Here we go. Let's just do this. You'll zoom in now. Look at this face. Is it a face? Is it a ghost? What is it? I don't need to know, but it's just always creeped me out looking at it. But anyway, they upgraded the FCM to the 2C bis, and the 2C bis either had the Char 2C Champagne had the 155mm howitzer on it, which only used a HE shell. Then the modification was the FCM 2C bis, and then they also added back its gun with the 75mm and increased its armor to 45mm on the front. So this thing, there are a lot of different variants that you could decide to put in. A lot of people have said this should be the rank 1 battle rating 1.3 vehicle, which the French get. I think it's actually too good for that. I know that sounds a little bit odd, but if you compare this to like the A1E1 Independent or the T35, this is so much better. You know, the French were very much ahead of their time. It's kind of surprising how, like, in the 20s, they had their production just sorted. You know, they knew what they wanted to build. They knew exactly, you know, how to build it. And then in the 30s, it just went, like, all to hell, which is just really weird and interesting. Well, not all to hell. They massively overpromised, or at least a lot of the industries did. Then we have the FCM-2C Lorraine. This was supposed to have 90mm of frontal armor, 65mm on the side, and this can't really be shown to actually exist, or at least the claims of its armor cannot really be seen to, you know, be actually proven, because I just don't understand how a 75-ton tank powered by the engine that is in this thing, and yes, the engine is huge, but it is only 2 of them, and it is only 500 horsepower completely. It's also an unsprung suspension, so good luck with your spines existing. But it was going at 15 kilometers an hour. I find it very hard that you could just increase by another like 6 or 7 tons and just get away with it without really hurting the machine. So that would be kind of surprising. Obviously, this was used in the Second World War, even though it was built in the 1920s, and it holds a close place in a lot of people's hearts, and I agree with them. You know, it's a really cool and innovative machine. I definitely hope it comes to the game. I don't want it in a gift vehicle version. I think a premium version, and then if you want to do a gift one, you do the 155mm version as the, you know, the gift one. But as a premium, I think this would fit absolutely wonderfully, being the most mass-produced super heavy tank that we have ever seen. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Don't forget about the World War mode stuff, which is coming pretty soon. And, well, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, Dyslexic Child, Martinez, Matati, Moxie, Nito, Nick Graham, Alobralo, and Super Cacti for supporting me on Patreon.